A major global outage linked to Microsoft disrupted websites and online services across the world on Wednesday, grounding key systems from the UK to the United States. Websites for Heathrow Airport, UK Bank, NatWest, and the popular game Minecraft were among those affected, along with retailers Asda and Marks and Spencer. The outage tracker down detector showed thousands of users reporting issues over several hours. Microsoft confirmed that some of its 365 users experienced delays with Outlook and other services, blaming the problem on what it called DNS issues. That's the same root cause as last week's Amazon Web Services outage. The company's Azure cloud platform, which powers large parts of the internet, also suffered what it described as a degradation of some services starting around 1600 GMT, and by 2100 GMT, Microsoft said it had restored a previous update and most websites were back online. In the UK, Consumer Watchdog urged affected users to keep records of failed transactions or payments and advised businesses to communicate clearly and compensate customers where necessary. Experts say the incident underscores the fragility of the modern internet, warning that reliance on just a few cloud providers as Microsoft, Amazon, and Google means a single error can ripple across the globe. Microsoft said it regrets the disruption and is reviewing the event to prevent a repeat. Joining us to help make sense of the massive Microsoft global outage that disrupted major websites, including Heathrow Airport, NatWest Bank, and even Minecraft, is Olusola. He is a polymath, a cybersecurity doctoral researcher, and CEO at Vesti AI. He joins us live here in our Lagos studio. Good to have you join us.
My pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I know we've spoken before. I think this is the first time. Is it the first time in the studio?
This is my second, actually.
Okay.
On
I just wanted to say, welcome to the studio, but you've been here before.
My pleasure.
But so let's talk about this. We've seen a repeated pattern or a pattern of repeated disruption to cloud computing services recently. First AWS and now Microsoft. Just explain to us what's going on and the implication of this.
Well, thank you very much. We've seen that within just a period of 1 week, and we don't even know what to expect over the next couple of weeks, but like some of the experts have said, it's an awakening for all of us, and as users or practitioners or platform enthusiasts, to know that severe or maximum dependency on cloud providers like this, without having backups or opportunities to be able to spread this across what has become truly monopolistic, could be an issue. So for those who are not familiar with the issue, AWS first, that's by Amazon Web Services, which hosts many of the apps you use, including Netflix and other ones, simply said they had an outage, and we didn't even have to say it. We just experienced many of our favorite apps down, and then just a few days later, this is happening to Microsoft. Who knows whether it will be Google next or any other provider that is popular. And that is why alternate service providers, are very important.
And I want to sort of go there, because I was going to ask you if they sort of highlight the systemic risk of that dependence. Europe is largely dependent on the US. We've not even come to Africa, right? Europe is also very largely dependent on services from the US as well. Right. And I'm wondering what that means for, just all of us. This heavy dependence.
Come to think of it, so all the three major providers, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, are originally US companies. And even though they've done a lot of work to establish themselves in other regions of the world, they still remain American companies. It means that's like in cybersecurity, it's like a one-stop, sort of like a systemic failure could cause a major issue. Considering them as one-stop shops. So we need, obviously, some form of more diversification along that. It takes time and years to be able to build those kind of global world powers from a cloud provision standpoint. I would say that some countries have insisted, that data should be domiciled within their countries, within their borders. And but it's one thing to domicile it, it's another thing for consumers to choose those regions in the period where they are hosting these services.
So the biggest problem, because I want to bring it back home, and I'm guessing that the biggest problem would be digital infrastructure,
right?
Which is where, America really dominates. And then let's come back to Africa and then Nigeria. Because again, we've talked about that digital sovereignty has been a problem.
Right.
And it has a really big impact on our own local content creators in terms of digital economy here.
Right.
And I'm wondering how, what this means for Africa and how we can begin to develop our own digital infrastructure.
Right. We have to dimension it from the responsibility of the government, the responsibility of private sector, as well as the responsibility of the end users themselves. If you launch a simple e-commerce platform and the first place you put it is AWS or Google or Azure, you would be subject to this type of outages whenever they happen. So the question really is, should we focus on only locally made, or should we have a mix, an hybrid of locally made or locally provided infrastructure for hosting, which actually exists, from the main ones of this world to now you're having other alternative providers like Huawei Cloud and other ones who essentially, because of the certifications that are needed, the government has more sort of oversight over them to be able to say this is where we should host our data. There are countries like Ghana and South Africa who have prevailed over Google, Microsoft to say data centers should be there. And we even have MTN as a cloud provider right now, working on initiatives that are quite popular that just got recently announced. So there is a lot of work in terms of orientation to say that these international cloud providers are not necessarily superior to the ones that are local here. It's really simple. It's provisioning servers. Well, it's not as simple. It's provisioning servers, ensuring that they are 100% available, and that there's expertise to continue to maintain the value that is on it. But I think it can start first from the way the federal government now has the audacity and the strength and courage to talk to international organizations. They can essentially say, okay, this is the value that Nigerians are spending on cloud services. This is not just now the value they're spending on cloud services, this is the level of adoption of global platforms like Netflix, Google, Amazon in Africa that are hosted on these global platforms. And we want to say that we want to work with these top organizations or top global cloud providers to set up, geographic jurisdictions around here where they can host data locally. So it starts from challenging Microsoft to invest $500 million, in Nigeria for a data center, and supporting the ones who are already local, who have started announcing it with this opportunity. And maybe even some underdogs who you haven't heard about are providing what we call some form of distributed systems that are more siloed, and begin to give them the support that is needed. Otherwise, we're going to keep experiencing this. So from what I hear,
the data center is where the issue is.
Yes, all of it starts from the data center. So the one for Amazon, somewhere in Virginia, So usually when you're hosting your service, whether it's an e-commerce shop or a streaming service, you would choose where the cloud providers allows you to choose where the servers are going to be. Sometimes they choose for you, but usually you can choose. So what we're saying is...
Because I'm thinking that we have data centers here. I mean, I've seen places that call themselves data centers.
The question really is Netflix sitting on it? Is Amazon sitting on it? When you're about to create, do they have, for many of them, do they have like the adoption level that makes a typical university student who is a software developer working for a non-technical person to choose something other than what is popular?
And just, I know that there was a case, was it 2023? I'm trying to remember who instituted that case. And they were talking about the cloud competition reform. And I'm wondering, because calls have started to grow again, and I'm wondering if it's time, for that conversation to come up. And then maybe countries can put together to say, look, it's time for cloud competition reform.
Trust me, there is no better time, especially in the world of artificial intelligence. We can't truly attain any form of leadership or even frontier leadership development or frontier development of AI systems if we do not really talk about the competitiveness of this. When we talk about infrastructure, what will the government commit to it? Which private sector leaders will be interested enough in the same way they've invested in banking, insurance, and other things that we're quite strong at, even now oil and gas with the refineries, and power. How can we make sure that we start talking about that conversation again? Because not only will they affect traditional compute, which is like social media services, streaming, and other things, but it would now really, really, really give us a chance to at least be able to play when it comes to developing AI systems, which also rely on these data centers.
Well, very interesting conversation. I wish we could talk, more, but we do have to go. Thank you so much for your time. Polymath, cybersecurity expert. All right, so I'm told not to end it yet. Looks like everyone is enjoying the conversation, so we'll just continue.
All right.
But I wanted to sort of expand this to I know we have a Ministry of Ministry of Digital Economy.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you think that at this moment we're doing enough in that regard. I see a lot of events, I have seen documents, but I'm just wondering, is it concrete enough that something that we can build on? And if we were to advise him, what should he be looking at now? Because now, I mean, we're talking AI. I'm not sure we've even tapped into that as a country.
Quite frankly, I must commend the Honorable Minister that is leading that, Dr. Bosun Tijani. You would see efforts that are, going on that are supposed to build the initial backbone, like the initiatives around fiber, and sort of creating about, 100 kilometers or so, if not more, of fiber optic cable across Nigeria that basically connects. It's more than 100 kilometers, actually. I don't have the numbers right now, but that is an initiative I'm super proud of. Also, recently, I saw him and the Minister of Trade, Industry, Trade and Investment actually commissioning, one of the Coleman wires plants that are producing fiber optic cables. But that's one component out of it. Now we're looking at compute infrastructure. How do we get hardware that is valuable? What kind of deals can we do at a country level with the likes of NVIDIA, with the likes of AMD, and maybe even local manufacturers like Blackshaw and some other ones, and say, what kind of, alignment can we do with that so that we can solve that? And then they're doing training, which is getting folks educated towards that. So I can see the component of fiber is doing great. The component of training is also massively great with the 3MTT program. But I haven't seen so much about compute. Essentially finding out at the country level, can we say, okay, Nigeria is committing XYZ amount of dollars, of $1 million on compute? Because that's what you see countries doing. In Europe, in Japan, they are making these country level agreements to book ahead of time because it's a race towards dominance in artificial intelligence. And then when you bring those three things together, compute, which is the infrastructure, storage, you bring it with fiber, which is connecting, you bring it with training, which is education, you have something that is more rounded that we can then say we are preparing for the days. Imagine, none of these two things were cyber attacks, but just imagine they were cyber attacks. These were just errors in DNS, DynamoDB, also we are told, if you want to be, we allow some conspiracy theory, but imagine if it was a cyber attack from maybe China or Russia to the US, and it totally affects the backbone of our transactions and work.
I have to put you on hold, or we'll return to this conversation just after the break. Stay with us. If there is a sense that in all of this, we're being left behind, and how far are we behind?
Well, it feels so. It feels so because as much as I see a couple of efforts, going on here and there, we have a national AI strategy, we have a minister that is really committed to pushing AI. There's a training and education framework to train 1 million people on artificial intelligence. That's the 3MTT program, in connection with announcements like organizations like Microsoft they have made. So I'm tracking like all of these efforts going around. There are also private sector players, education institutions that are doing their best. I haven't seen so much from a curriculum standpoint, like a curriculum review standpoint from, let's say, the Nigerian University Commission or the Ministry of Education that would bring, vice chancellors together and also those who plan our curriculum to say artificial intelligence shouldn't be an option for those who are studying computer science. It should be something that should be across every field, almost like people should get... You
think that should be at the university level or even at the secondary school level?
I mean, there should be efforts at the primary and secondary school level, but I have this thing about tertiary education being it's like the last stop. Almost like if you don't get it right at this last stop, you won't get it. So I do believe in starting out early with many of this, and for example, programs like Hour of Code, which is now Hour of AI, which helps kids to try out, coding from a young age, is now being focused on learning how to code AI from a young age. And that's fantastic. So primary school kids from 6 years old, 8 years old can begin to learn how to code. But at the university level, you have people who are just about to get into the workforce. And if they don't pick it up at that point, I see it as more of a state of emergency. That these guys are probably not going to return to any form of education in the future. It's just a percentage that will do professional development. So we must catch them at that point. And my point here is, how can we get dual degrees available for students across board, almost like nationalize it and say, no matter what you study, you also must take this prerequisite program in artificial intelligence just to be able to get ready to do that. So there is infrastructure work, like we started from the outage matter, and there is education work, and there's connectivity work, and all these three things will join together to take us to where we must be. But your question is, are we in some sense behind? The answer is yes. In terms of compute, we are right now consumers again of Llama, which is the open source version of the LMS by Meta, the mother company of Facebook and Instagram, and we're using ChatGPT like no man's land. We're excited about it. There's even Naira pricing for ChatGPT now, so we're now still at the user end. I see a couple of efforts like,
and all of the steps you have to do, you find that they are on some of these foreign platforms.
They are all coming from the cataloged information on the internet, which is all still sitting on the servers.
And I'm wondering again, because I track, and I like, first of all, I like that you mentioned, the idea of having a major, because we find that most times in foreign universities where you major and then you can take prerequisite courses as well. But I also wanted to ask you, because I track sometimes what's going on, especially in East Africa, where you find a lot of growth and movement when it comes to the digital space. And I'm wondering, is that something they're doing differently? I don't know, I've not followed South, but East, I think they're doing really well. You will correct me on that. And I'm wondering if there is something they're doing differently that we're not.
Well, some of them have the benefit of scale. So sometimes I like to put things in perspective. The sizes, around East Africa, some of these countries, we're a very large construct as Nigeria. So if you ask me what Lagos State was doing and whether they're doing it correctly, there are a couple of states like that I see. The Kwara State government has this Ilorin Innovation Hub in Kwara State. I'm not even sure if it's championed by the state government, but there's a hub there. Lagos has all kinds of initiatives going on. So those are the ones I'd like to compare to some East African countries, right? But one thing I think they are good at is that they're good at telling the stories of what they are doing. So sometimes we're doing a lot, or we're doing something at par with what even some of these East African countries are doing, but we're not telling the story well enough. And as much as I would like to say that and give credit to us, I would say that for the scale that we are in, it's like we're trying to, we hear things like there's this $1 million initiative to train 1 million people. That's $1 for one person. It's not real. It's going to stress us, or we might not achieve what we're trying to. So financing is important. So we have to be committed to the initiatives of artificial intelligence and education, the way we are committed to the coastal highway. The way we are committed to like all those kind of initiatives at that scale. We have to think at that scale and commit. And that's what I have to say about that. But I have seen truly also there is some comfort. Prior to what we are seeing recently, there's some comfort that international organizations have in setting up, research centers in some of these other countries that they may not have had either to in Nigeria, except now that the climate is getting better. So you see, for example, that Google did a research center in Ghana that's worth like millions of dollars, and I think recently another commitment, which is interesting, by the way, by OpenAI at the University of Lagos is quite impressive, the first, of such labs in Nigeria. So we have to have ambassadors, ministers who are challenging these global corps to do these things here. But I think one other way to think about it, if you were reverse thinking it, is how can we challenge even our local corporations, our top banks who are declaring massive revenues to do the same type of things and channel it towards the things that truly move the needle.
So I have 30 seconds left. Because you mentioned hubs, I'm very wary of tech hubs, and state governments have a thing now with tech hubs to look like they're investing in technology. How many of them are really functional and sustainable and meeting their original goals?
Yeah, to be very kind on them, like we were at a point where we said we didn't even have any place that youth could call home to do something. The real question is whether those centers are working the way they should. But for the fact that we don't still have enough, like it would be very insensitive to discourage them from building those things in the first instance. The real question we now need to be asking is what is civil society doing? What are entrepreneurship development organizations doing? What are chambers of commerce doing that they are not approaching these centers and say, let's create programming for you. And I would be curious to know whether they have attempted and whether there are blockers in that area. But I think another area of what people should be doing is to look at how do we activate all the existing ops that we have, that dust is just gathering on them, or they don't go past the celebration of that first commissioning. But I must say that there is still a lot that needs to be done, even in creating ops. So we have to be careful not to provide discouragement.
I get that. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I know this conversation can go on and on and on, but it's been a pleasure speaking with you. CEO of Vesti AI.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your brilliant